If we haven't had a chance to meet personally, my name's Bob Seale. As Jason said, I'm one of the pastors here. I'm the executive pastor of Next Gen Ministry, which means I work with all the staff that works with our kids, our high school, middle school students, our residents, our young adults, and the parents and families that are working with them. You'll hear Jason or Pastor Doug or people who have known me for a long time. They'll call me Bobby. That's how I was known when I was in the Washington, D.C., Virginia area. I moved to Philly, and Bobby just didn't fly in Philly. All right, Bobby's got beat up in Philly. So I changed my name. I didn't want to be in a street fight every day in Philadelphia. But like Jason said, if you follow golf, you know it's the Ryder Cup. It's being played right now. It's kind of the rest of the world against the United States. And some of you will remember this. Some of you have no idea about this. We're about to inform you, those of us that know this. But back in the 1990s or 2000s, there was this golfer. His name was Tiger Woods. Perhaps you've heard of him. But he was in his heyday. And so if you watched any golf tournaments, you know that when Tiger would get up on the tee and he would let one rip, there was always one guy. There was one guy in the gallery, in the crowd there, and he would yell something as soon as Tiger hit the ball. Okay, does anybody remember what it was? You the man, right? Like every time a guy would hit it, somebody would be like, you the man. I'm like, well, I mean, he's hitting a golf ball, but Tiger was the man. And can you think of a you the man moment that maybe you had in your life? Like somebody might not have shouted it out to you, but when you did something or there was a moment where you knew people were thinking of it, they were looking at you going, he's the man, right? I personally have never stepped up and hit the ball off a tee and had anybody thought or say that, okay, from my drive. Some of you have played golf with me, and you're like, yeah, you're not the man when it comes to golf. But I did have this one you the man moment, all right? I was a newly appointed head softball coach at Upper Dublin High School in Philadelphia. Upper Dublin was a perennial bottom dweller in the fast-pitch softball world and league. And it was the first week of tryouts, and I was walking through the small gym in the high school to put away some of the equipment from practice. But inside the gym was the varsity and JV baseball teams. And they had set up 4 jugs pitching machines. It's a machine that stands up tall, 2 wheels, and you shoot balls through it, and the guys can take batting practice with it. And they weren't shooting real baseballs in the gym. It was tennis balls. But I would say as I walked in the gym and there's 4 guys taking BP from these jugs machines, it's the closest that I've been. Some of you have served in the military in combat. This would be the closest to combat that I've ever come. There were tennis balls ricocheting off walls. Guys were getting hit everywhere. And I put the key in the closet to put the equipment away. The coach of the team was a former Philadelphia Phillies pitching coach. And the baseball team was like perennial playoff contenders. And this dude would not give me the time of day. Like I'd said hi to him a couple times. Hey, can we get together and talk about how you do practices? And he wanted nothing to do with me. All right? Coach Troster, Coach T. So I've got my key in the door. Tennis balls are flying all over the place in this gym, and I open the door, and in a moment of divine survival is what I would call it, this big dude, their star player, rips a tennis ball. It's coming at triple digits at my face. I catch it peripheral vision sees it out of the side. And all the guys see this thing heading towards the new softball coach. And this is what happens. It was so beautiful. I just went and caught it and then threw it over my shoulder nonchalantly like nothing had happened. And the dudes lost their mind. I mean, if you know baseball players, there's they're going crazy. And I put the stuff in and I turn around and there's Coach Troster. Coach T's there. And he looks at me never spoken to me before. And he goes, "You the man, coach. You the man." Like, he was my best buddy after that. Like, for 3-4 years, he'd be like, he had a funny way of speaking. He was like, Seale. Remember that time you caught that ball in the gym? Every year, like 4 or 5 times, he was like, you the man. Now that's a fairly, Coach T had a low bar for what it meant to be the man, right? All you had to do was catch a tennis ball. But we're talking in this series about what does it look like to be the man, a kingdom man. In God's estimation, what is a man, and what can we do as men to elevate, to be formed, to be transformed into the man that he created us to be? Because how many of you know that we're not quite the man, if we were honest, not in a shameful way, that God created us to be? That there's something more for us. Do you ever get the sense that there's something more? Even some of the OGs in the room, like myself, or some of you that are maybe just a step ahead of me, you know that there's more, and there's always an opportunity with Jesus to elevate our internal heart person so that our external is expressed out into the world. We can always grow and elevate that. And so this morning I want to talk about this idea of identity, but I want to say to us as men that I want us to talk about doing heart work and not just hard work. Often as men, our identity is built on our hard work, our work ethic, what we accomplish, what we produce, the medals or the accolades or the money or the career that we build around our life. And there's nothing wrong with hard work. In fact, we were made to work hard. But hard work was never meant to be our identity. Hard work actually should be a byproduct of our heart, not a byproduct of our need to prove ourselves as men. Not the byproduct of us needing to prove blank, whatever that would be for you. You insert the word for you. The need to prove that I am enough, or successful, or capable, or competent, a provider, or worthy of love and respect. See, if we are just doing hard work, we're trying to earn something or get something by our hard work. I would propose that actually, as men, if we open up the book, we would know this. We would know that we're actually all of those things that I just listed. In 20s and 30s, our young adults group, we've been looking at Psalm 139 and who we are through the lens of that one psalm. And there's a part of that psalm that says that you and I are fearfully and wonderfully made. Now, not the most masculine of adjectives, fearfully maybe, wonderfully, But here's the meaning of those words in the ancient language. To be fearfully or wonderfully made means this: someone created a being worth and inspiring awe. That literally our spiritual DNA, our DNA that we got from God when He created us so that we would walk the earth collaborating with God as someone who was worthy, had dignity and honor, and was worthy of awe as they walked about. That's our spiritual DNA. But a hard work posture puts us at the center of the story. It makes our relationship with God transactional. Basically thinking, we may not really think this, but it's how we're living, where we think if I work hard, Jesus will bless me, or He will protect me, or He will give me the things that I do. I'm at the center of the story, but Jesus doesn't want a transactional relationship with us. He wants a transformational one. What Jesus intended for us is a transformational relationship that requires not just hard work, but some heart work. And heart work is a collaboration with the Holy Spirit where he transforms us. We have to do our part, hard work, but God is doing the inside heart work, and we do it together. Being a kingdom man is not transactional, it's transformational. True strength isn't performing on the outside, it's a spirit-renewed heart on the inside that fuels our every action. King David, from the Old Testament, if you're familiar with him, was known as a man after God's own heart. That was the description given to him. But that heart work that allowed him to live a life that somebody would look at his life and say, hey, that's a guy after God's own heart. That Duxton, he's a guy after God's own heart. The way he lived his life that earned him that title, that name, that description in 1 Samuel and Acts came not because of his success, but it came actually out of his failure. That's when David started to do the heart work. And you may not know this, but David kind of, when you're given the title, a man after God's own heart, it's kind of saying, you're the man. You're the man. And one day, God sends somebody to King David, and he tells him, you the man. God sends this guy, Nathan, to David. Nathan was a prophet. The prophets were God's mouthpiece, communicators to leaders and rulers and to his people. They often got themselves into trouble because they were truth tellers. They were people who just kind of gave you the unfiltered, the unvarnished truth. Anybody have a friend like that? Like they're just like, it shoots straight, right? You know the guy. You're maybe sitting next to them. Some of you sitting there are like, I am that guy. Well, he comes to David and he tells him a story. And this is in 2 Samuel chapter 12. If you wanted to open up your device, it'll be up on the screen. When Nathan came to David, he said, there were two men in a certain town, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb he had bought. He raised it and he grew it up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him. It's like he's describing his dog. Like this, I guess a lamb in this case would be this guy's like black lab, all right? Now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who had come to him. And instead he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man who had nothing. The king had everything, and prepared it for the one who had come to him. It was customary, it was an obligation if somebody showed up at your doorstep, a traveler, that you would invite them into your home and you would prepare him a meal. So this guy who has everything takes the lamb from the guy who has nothing, his pet lamb, and he sacrifices it and cooks up a lamb dinner for the guest. David, hearing this, burns with anger against the man. David's fired up. The king is fired up. Back in those days when the king got fired up, bad things happened. Okay, he didn't have to go through committees. He didn't have anybody to consult. In fact, many of the prophets, these truth tellers, would go to kings, tell them the truth, and literally the king would be like, you're going to have to lose your life for that one. So Nathan's out there a little bit as he tells him this. So David burns with anger against the man and said to Nathan, as surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die! Exclamation point. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity. And then Nathan said to David, you are the man. David's just burning with anger. And Nathan looks at him, he goes, You the man. In that moment, Nathan had to be thinking like, I mean, this could be it. Right here. Some of you are familiar with the backstory. David, king, giant killer, warrior, general, poet, musician, had taken another man's wife as his own. He used his power and position to sleep with her. He got her pregnant. And since David was an overachiever, he didn't stop there. He sent her husband, a guy named Uriah, to the front lines of the battlefield, knowing that he would be killed in battle. So adding adulterer and murderer to his resume in that moment. And you know how long it was between Nathan coming to David and David being found out? 9 months to a year. It was probably 9 months to a year before Nathan comes to him and confronts him. He kept it hidden inside. He got away with it for 9 months to a year. How does somebody so zealous for God, who put his life on the line as a teenager to fight Goliath, become an adulterer and a murderer? See, something I would propose was being formed inside of him, leading up to this moment. David didn't wake up one day and think to himself, today's the day. I think I will commit adultery and murder. Like that doesn't happen in a moment. There's something going on in his heart. And he had been doing hard work, and he was been rewarded for it, position and power, but he hadn't been doing the heart work. And he finds himself in a place where really he's wrecked his life in one sense. Thank God the story doesn't end there. But what is the moment? What is the turning point where we see this heart change and shift begin to start happening? Some theologians think this turning point was in 2 Samuel 11:1. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army, and they destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. David remains in Jerusalem during the time of year where kings went out to war with their men. It doesn't say why, but he made a decision to stay back. He made a decision to not fulfill his call. And I think there's 3 applications, warnings, if you will, or 3 things we can pull from this as we talk about kingdom men, becoming kingdom men, elevating our impact in this world. The first is this: remember your call. Don't drift. Throughout David's life, if you look at it, it's regular to see that David will stop what he's doing in the midst of a challenge or an important decision, and he asks for the Lord's direction. Here we see no mention of that. He seems to make this decision on his own. I would say David drifted from his mission. He drifted from his call. Last time we were together, Pastor Eric talked about CIA. Does anybody remember what they were? Call was the first one. Impact. And so he's drifted from his call as king, as the warrior king, and he remains home. He's got some type of mission drift going on inside of him. I don't know if he just decided to choose comfort over convenience. At 62, I'll say this: I not only desire comfort a little bit more than I used to, but I also now have the means to have comfort that I didn't used to have. And maybe that's what happened to David. He would have been around 45, we think, to 52 years of age. He held the title of king, but he abdicated his role and responsibility to others. And that happened in his heart first before he made the decision. Maybe he was feeling his age. Maybe he was like, I don't want spend another spring in the tents on the hard ground in the battlefield, doing the hard work of war. Perhaps he was tired, or maybe he thought he had lost his edge. Ever felt like that? Perhaps he was moving from one stage of his life to another. Maybe at 45 to 52, he was making a transition from being a warrior, and he was moving into the next part of his life where he would be known as a wise man. And he was struggling in that transition. Because sometimes it's easy to lose our identity or significance in a life transition. Graduation from high school or college or into the marketplace, from single to married, becoming a dad, having money and the means for comfort for the first time ever, empty nesting or retirement. Transitions can be disruptive if we don't understand when they are happening and we are accidental about them in those transitions. We just kind of can drift from our mission. So mission drift or identity drift is a real thing. It takes intentionality to do the heart work along with the hard work. And hopefully we are being intentional as men in identifying our call, the impact it makes in the world, and the assignment that God has put in front of us. See, that's what Pastor Eric talked about last time. This idea of call, impact, assignment. We got to get clear on that first, because that is our North Star. That is our anchor, that in these times of transition or we feel like we're drifting in our mission, that we can go back to those and remember, and David had drifted. The second thing we can do, and this is what earns David the title of a man after God's own heart. It didn't happen from defeating Goliath. It didn't happen from all of the accolades that he had becoming king or from his power. It's how he responded to Nathan's confrontation. When Nathan confronted him, Nathan didn't lose his life. David's response to Nathan's confrontation you can find in Psalm 51. You should write that down. Psalm 51. It's an entire psalm to God, and it's a psalm of confession, I did it, and repentance. Nathan confronts him. He doesn't respond with denial. He doesn't respond with pride. He doesn't respond with power. He responds with brokenness. And he faces the most brutal facts of his current reality. And the reason he's able to do that is because he understands he has a loving and a gracious God. And so if you're feeling like I did as I read the story of David, you're thinking, that's my story. I had heart drift. I did things that hurt my life, and it hurt the lives of the people around us. Our God is ready to welcome us back and do the heart work with us. But first, we have to return with a broken heart. In fact, he says in Psalm 51:10, one verse, "Create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me." Create in me a clean heart. Renew in me a steadfast spirit. You know what it's like. I know you know what it's like, but I'll speak for me. I know what it's like when I'm hiding something, my mission drift or my heart issue, and making sure the outside doesn't betray what's really going on the inside. The weight that you carry, the shame that you can feel. And God is inviting us back to come and return with a broken heart, and he meets us in our brokenness. Lastly is this, it's run with your band of brothers. If you look at the life of David, throughout most of his life, David ran around and had around him a group of men who were like brothers. In fact, his greatest moments are marked by the subtle reference to these men. He didn't do these things alone. He did this with a group of men around him like brothers. The first was a guy named Jonathan. And you can see this in 1 Samuel 18. Jonathan, it says this about Jonathan. The soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David. They were brothers. And they encouraged each other. They knew each other so well that when one of them was off, they knew that person was off. And then David had his mighty men, or what's called the fighting men, the warriors that he put around him. They're highlighted in 1 and 2 Samuel's, in the book of Chronicles and Kings. They're heroic warriors and fiercely loyal friends, and David's mighty men were more than just warriors. They rescued him when he was weak. They advised him to persevere his life and his calling. They reminded him often of his calling as king, as the general, as the one who listened to the Lord. They reminded him that he was a man after God's own heart. When he couldn't remember for himself and life was so challenging, he forgot who he was. He had a group of fighting men who weren't only literally fighting as warriors, they were fighting for him and for each other. We've got to run with our band of brothers. That's what I call them. A group of fighting men around us that will fight for us, sometimes men, when we can't fight on our own. So it's not just hard work. It's hard work. And when we are aware of what's going on in the heart and we have others around us and we go to God with a broken and contrite spirit, is what it says. We're collaborating with God and we're in a transformational relationship with, and it transforms our life from the inside out. Just hard work is trying to transform our lives from the outside in. I'm just going to discipline myself. Make sure I do all the things. And God's saying, well, do all the things, but let's do the hard work and have you doing all the things as a byproduct of your heart. So, men, it's about our identity being rooted in God, not just what we do. It's about knowing what's going on in our heart on the inside and collaborating with God and trying to have a transformational relationship with Him where He changes us from the inside out. I want to show you a picture because I don't want to be a person who stands up here and just talks in a way or shares with you a message, because this message, I don't know if it's connected with you. I hope so. But I know it connected for me. I had this moment where yesterday, finishing up my studying for this in preparation, I was like, I get it, Lord. You're doing heart work on me. This right here is a group, I would call them my band of brothers. They're people I've known for a long time. The young woman there is not one of my band of brothers, by the way. I want to make sure you're like, that's not a dude, okay? You're right. That's my daughter there. That's my daughter Riley. And the guy next to Riley was my soon-to-be son-in-law. It was interesting. I checked the date today. This picture was taken exactly 1 year ago to this date. This band of brothers, you couldn't tell by the smiles on the face. You can't tell by the enjoyment of company that we're having at this moment. Nobody there at Dave's Hot Chicken could tell what we had just done together. This group of men came around me, my wife and I. We lost our 30-year-old son to mental illness a year ago. And this group of brothers came with me when we moved my son Trey's stuff out of the home. And this morning, this wasn't planned, but this morning I pulled this up and I looked at my journal entry from a year ago. And here's what I wrote. Fear and dread, pain, a depth that I did not know existed. Crushed and broken. The presence and fellowship of other men. Their quiet resolve in doing a most difficult task. It was safe to let them see me broken and weak. They carried me on my hardest day. Fellowship not born of strength and success, but birthed out of pain, loss, and weakness. A pain that was mine, that they made their own. My band of brothers. To do the hard work, you must have a band of brothers. We're not meant to do it alone. When we can't carry the weight of life itself on our own, we need a group of men to carry it with us, to remind us not to drift from our mission, to come back, return with a broken heart, and to lift each other up, to call each other to elevate. Let me pray. Jesus, thanks for these men, their desire to elevate. I pray that you will take the next 20 minutes or so and that you will bless the conversation at the table. Help us to pay attention to the tension. I pray that we would be men who do the hard work and not just the hard work. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.